Welcome back to Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly, and joining me is my husband Barrett. Today, we're delving into a topic that has been resurging recently, the resurgence of masks and potential COVID lockdowns. Montgomery County schools outside Washington, D.C., as well as Morris Brown College in Atlanta, Georgia, have reinstated mask mandates. However, studies question the effectiveness of masks in simply getting sick. One study found that masks may not be as effective as we once thought. In fact, the Cochrane Library, which assesses scientific evidence, found that wearing masks, including N95 masks, had little impact on COVID infection and deaths.
And Kimberly, that's a significant revelation. Maybe that's why on Wednesday President Biden joked, "Don't tell him I don't have it on," when he pulled his mask off during the Medal of Honor ceremony. And Senator Ted Cruz tweeted, if only children in Montgomery County public schools also had the freedom not to wear a mask. But what can it hurt to wear a mask?
Well, Barrett, researchers at a South Korean hospital examined various medical-grade masks, and they discovered that N95 masks released 8 times the recommended amount of a toxic volatile compounds. Prolonged exposure to these compounds had been linked to organ damage and cancer, another dangerous C word.
Yeah, it's not just a matter of effectiveness, but also the potential health risks. Now, in looking at some of these mask mandates when they're coming on, I think the recommendation was to continue wearing N95 masks. So, with the proven chemicals that are coming out of it, and I'm assuming it's due to the manufacturing process, and I'm assuming that it has something to do with probably the way the fibers are coated in order to make them effective. But it just seems as though that there's the potential for the mask to actually cause more harm than what it's protecting against. But let's talk about the impact of lockdowns.
Right, Barrett. Let's highlight some significant findings from recent studies. A study compares the death rates across the United States, the UK, and Sweden, which did not have mandates or lockdowns. In a study from Johns Hopkins, as of March 10th, 2023, the United States had a 1.1 percentage of death rates of those who contracted COVID compared to 0.9% in the UK, which had lockdowns, and 0.9%, so the same, in Sweden, which did not have any mandates or lockdowns. So comparing the UK, which did have lockdowns, to Sweden, there is no difference. So the death rates aren't really affected by masks and lockdowns.
And, it's quick to point out that Governor Ron DeSantis was one of the pioneers of lifting lockdowns and not requiring masking. Texas Governor Abbott did the same thing for masks, not mandating at the state level. Now, there were definitely county and city officials that did that, but still at the statewide level. But let's not, forget the impact of COVID on our children. During the previous COVID lockdowns, they lost more than a third of a school year's worth of learning progress, as evidenced by primary school reading assessments and mathematics as well.
I heard about an article written by David Sweg, a writer for The Atlantic. He reports there is a Montessori school in Ithaca, New York, that enacted mask mandates in 2020 and yet never stopped. So to this day, they are still requiring their students and teachers to wear a mask. And the shocking thing that I found in his article about this school, and I've never heard of this, is something called silent lunches.
Silent lunches? I'll be honest, our kids would never make it.
No, of course not. No one is allowed to talk. One reason why parents want kids in school is not just to get them out of the parents' hair, but to learn how to socialize. There are kids in say, second grade. They were in kindergarten in 2020. They've never had a single day of normal school, no normal socialization with other kids. And I have to read this very heartbreaking part of this article. So a fourth grader described the bizarre scene. So kids had grown so forlorn and desperate during silent lunch that they made up their own sign language so that they could communicate with each other. We really just wanted to talk, she said. They contrived unique hand signals to mean different words.
You know, honestly, this is robbing children of being children. And, you know, studies have shown that there has not been widespread deaths of second graders and first graders throughout this pandemic. But I'll be honest, it's the parents' fault. The Montessori school is a private school.
Yes.
Right?
They pay about $18,000 a year to go there.
So a significant sum of money, and yet they are enabling the school to do this. Now, I think you had mentioned in our other conversations that some parents have pulled their kids out of the school.
Yes.
But if you can imagine this little child that's talking about making up their own language in order to be able to communicate, first of all, good on them for being creative enough to do that. But second of all, how heartbreaking is that their parents are choosing to send their child there and pay a large sum of money in order to perpetuate this. The parents need to, and I understand, you know, in some private schools, parents are afraid to speak out because they feel as though their child will be removed from the school.
But if everyone spoke up, then maybe they would change the policy.
Exactly, and that's the biggest thing is the parents need to all band together and stop this madness. I mean, truly stop this madness.
And to mention again, Sweden, which did not impose strict lockdowns, saw no significant learning loss, of course, during the pandemic. This raises an important question. Is it worth the negligible, if any, health benefit to sacrifice our children's education?
Well, that's an excellent question, Kimberly. We also need to consider that the Education Department National Assessment of Educational Progress reported that the largest score declines in math and reading since they began tracking those metrics in 1990. Minority and low-income students were hit particularly hard. And as we've highlighted before, these learning losses could have long-term economic consequences. You have to remember there are second and third order effects to everything. The McKinsey and Company report suggested that a potential lifetime earning reductions for K through 12 students and a substantial GDP loss. So again, second and third order effects that are greater than just the individual child, just the individual family, just the individual school, city, county, state, country. It all magnifies on itself.
And socially speaking, the lockdowns were not only a divisive subject, but also an isolating one. Children were isolated from other children, stunting the development of their social skills. People were in their homes by themselves for months. In Genesis 2:18, it states, "It is bad for man to be alone." And that's in reference to the creation of woman, but I think that's also a community aspect. And having friends and relationships. So what did people do? In turn, they go online where they can get into an echo chamber and further lean into what they already believe or want to hear, instead of talking to people in real life where learning really thrives. And when people feel isolated and are not allowed to be around others, they don't look out for their neighbor. When people are around others, it's possible to make people realize that they aren't that different. And when people come together, they are more likely to feel invested in what happens in their community or school. The lockdowns caused many people to rely on the government for help because businesses were closed. And when people are reliant on the government and become content with it or expectant of it, we have to ask, how could this possibly encourage innovation? When the government's going to fix your problems, I mean, why do I need to invent anything? And how often does innovation drive the economy? Like Amazon or the iPhone. And when businesses are closed, guess what? Goods are not made and can become, and thus they're delayed and become more expensive. And when things become more expensive, people want to buy less, and thus businesses, especially small businesses, suffer the most. During the lockdowns, businesses were eligible for PPP loans and EIDL loans. Well, however, another lockdown could ruin any hope of those businesses being able to make those EIDL payments. And people will often say, oh, business owners care more about money than lives. My argument to that are, first of all, not all business owners are wealthy. Many small business owners barely get by. And some business owners took out the EIDL loans not for a rainy day fund or to invest in their company's assets, to get, new shiny signs or anything like that. They took out the loans to keep the employees paid. So another round of mandates and lockdowns will destroy their ability to pay those loans back.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of discussion on whether or not the EIDL loans were necessary. That I saw in a lot of articles and comments that the businesses should have been allowed to fail if they weren't strong enough. If they weren't strong enough to make it, then they should have failed. However,
we've bailed out airlines, banks.
Right. But the biggest thing about capitalism in a free market economy is all things fair and the same applied to every single business. That sentiment could be correct. However, that implies that there is a free market economy, that if people who were in their houses wanted to mask up and brave the wilds in order to go into a business and spend their money, and the competition was equal between those businesses, then if one business fails and one succeeds, then that's capitalism. However, there was an artificial thumb on the scale, and that was the United States government. The United States government forced business closures, and forced stay-at-home orders and things like that. And so that was a outside influence that was mandating things outside of market conditions. And that is why my argument that the EIDL loan is appropriate for these small business owners, because the market didn't dictate whether they were successful. The government shut them down.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully we've just made some good points that COVID is not as threatening in people's lives as much as the response did, and will have. I mean, there were suicides, people lost their paychecks, they lost their homes, and you know what else is bad for people's health? Not being able to buy food, not being able to house their kids. And last I checked, living on the street and having no food and having no medical insurance is not good for your health either.
Yeah, so in the midst of the discussions about returning to mask mandates and lockdowns, it's crucial to remember that the narrative surrounding COVID should not just include safety and saving lives, especially when several studies show that masks and mandates do not affect either.
And perhaps instead of cancel culture, as in, I won't let you attend my wedding if you're not vaccinated, what we truly need is a counsel culture, I heard Dr. Phil say the other day, where we engage in open, constructive dialogues to find solutions that balance these complex challenges.
And with that, this concludes this segment. Please stick around after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.